I mean, really, for a guy who has way too many shirts, t-shirts, sweatshirts, and everything, this, right? Oh, and M's got hers.
Let's
Big high,
go.
big high fives to Dan Georgilis from South Dakota State, which won twice since last week. And I did lie to him. I said, if you win those two matches, because they were tough matches, if you win and get to 22-0 in the Summit League, I'd put you at number 16 in my poll this week. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it.
Come
Yeah,
on.
I know maybe next week, but we are representing. I mean, is this great? Is this great?
That's awesome. That's a nice hoodie too. I like my t-shirt.
Yeah, absolutely. There you go. We have so much. We have so much to talk about, and in a couple of
Yeah.
minutes, we're going to be joined by Jeremy White, who's the coach at Southeastern Louisiana University. All right, trivia question just for you, Emily. Who has the longest winning streak in the country?
Since South Dakota State.
Right, at 22-0. Who is next?
Well, let me guess. Southeastern Louisiana.
At 20 with an RPI of 61, leading the Southland Conference. But next is Nebraska at 19. And then two teams with 17 each, two of my all-time faves, Western Kentucky and Dayton.
Mm-hmm.
Penn State and Creighton are at 14, and UT Arlington's at 12. Kansas leads the Big 12 with 11 in a row, Arizona State 10 in a row, which, of course, we're going to get to both of them later. ACC, the streak leader, Georgia Tech with 8. And in the SEC, which is a jumbled mess, 7 for Missouri. You know,
Heck
if
yeah.
we had said that, if I had said that to you in August, we'll be talking in early November, and Missouri is going to have the longest winning streak in the league at this point in the SEC. You'd have gone, huh? So before we get Jeremy White, let's go back because you had the game of the century, at least for this month. And it wasn't even this month. Um, what was it? Was it November 1st? Friday, November 1st?
Friday.
Yeah, so it was this month. Nebraska, Wisconsin. And like all of these other great matches we talk about, and it was a sweep.
Every time. It's a and for us as TV, no one cares who wins ever. The only thing that we care about is that we have a good game. And normally that means let's go more than 3 sets. And if it's going to be 3 sets, let's make them at least a little bit close. I think everyone was pretty shocked that that only went 3 sets. And, obviously a lot of Nebraska fans are like, well, that's not shocking. We've been rolling. And I completely understand that. Nebraska's been rolling. They look awesome. But I think two things can also be true. Nebraska played incredibly well, and Wisconsin played very not well. That was kind of the worst that I had seen Wisconsin play in quite some time, other than kind of the beginning of the season. But I mean, this was a Wisconsin team that still leads the conference in hit percentage and opponent hit percentage during conference play. They had kind of found their rhythm and were rolling. So headed into a game at the Field House, which is one of the toughest places to play in the country. Nebraska had not won there since 2013. Wisconsin also hadn't been swept at home since 2016. So those are crazy things that when you combine them, just I think shocked everyone. And again, as TV, like we go into those matches and there's so much production and so many production elements and graphics that we want to get out during the match. And it's so hard to do during a 3 set match. I thought we had some fun stuff in the beginning and throughout, but then the game takes precedent and all those storylines kind of go out the window. But Nebraska was incredible. I thought the defense, especially for Nebraska, but it was one of the better defensive nights that we saw in the backcourt for Wisconsin as well, but they just didn't have an answer. Wisconsin was hitting every ball out of bounds after Nebraska put up 6 blocks in the first set. And when that happens, it changes the way that you run your offense. If you're getting completely stuffed out of the gym during set one, you have to change some things. You want to swing higher, you want to swing a little bit harder. And a lot of that caused Wisconsin errors. They ended up hitting below 100, which was their worst hitting night of the season. And despite their decently good defense, they just couldn't keep up with Nebraska. And I thought it was incredible for this Nebraska team that has really struggled to play at the field house. Again, they hadn't won since 2013. And I was talking to Merritt. We had kind of a long break before our interview at the end of the match. And I asked her, I was like, were you even playing volleyball in 2013? She's like, I know, I hadn't even started playing. So that's when you put into context for, a senior on that team that hadn't even started playing volleyball the last time that Nebraska won in Madison. Again, that made it more shocking. But I mean, kudos to Nebraska. They're playing lights out right now, 19 match win streak. So got to give credit where credit's due. I put them as number one on my poll because I thought they looked incredible.
Well, I thought they did too, but I did not put them number one in my poll because those two big
Fair.
wins it had last week still count,
Yep.
and it didn't do anything bad to lose
Yeah,
being number one. Nonetheless, I still hope the two of them play each other at some point.
me too.
Interesting in that match, Nebraska had 10.5 blocks. Wisconsin had 9, so they
Mhm.
caught up. But the two things that impressed me the most was the unrecordable stat of how many balls were slowed at the net by the Nebraska bigs. They weren't
Yes.
blocks, but they were great slowdowns.
Yep.
And then who in the world and where did she come from is Olivia Mock because
Olivia Mount. Oh,
she
she's
was the X
oh,
factor. She
she's
was the
awesome.
total X factor in that match. She made
Well,
a couple of spectacular digs, and then she had 4 aces the whole season, and she had
yeah.
2 at
I
Wisconsin.
mean, she was doing incredible. I think defensively, if you've watched Nebraska, they have the best defensive core in the country. You have a backcourt with Lexi Rodriguez, Lainey Showboy, and Olivia Mauk. Like maybe you get it past the front line, but then in the backcourt, they're digging everything. And she was incredible. I thought especially the way that their serving strategy went, they were just serving zone one time and time again. So that made it really difficult for Wisconsin's freshman setter to adjust to a ball coming behind her head. They couldn't run the offense that they normally run, and they were putting so much pace back there. And I agree. I think, talking to Cook after the match too, I mean, he was so impressed with Malk. And I think everyone was just with her ability to control that back court when you're playing next to a libero that is, one of the best in the country.
Yeah, well, they got theirs. I mean, the good players got their numbers, and
Yeah.
we had what we expected pretty much from everybody else. But those two things, they slowed down so many balls. All right, so look, so Jeremy White, the coach at Southeastern Louisiana, is waiting in the wings. I would assume that both Emily and most of you and my dog Granite, who is grinding around by my feet right now looking for some snacks or something. Granite, I haven't dropped any food here. Um, Jeremy White has done something at Southeastern Louisiana that's never been done before. And I lived in Louisiana for 39 years. I ran a club, which is important for the tie in to Jeremy White. But he has won at a high level consistently at Southeastern Louisiana, which basically over those past 40 years has been a vast wasteland with a couple of exceptions. Jeremy, how have you done that?
Well, I think a lot of it's just we've latched on to kind of the culture of our state with regards to kind of the gritty nature of a lot of these athletes, and I think just bringing in that or bringing that kind of mentality to our program has really helped, and we've the luxury of nobody really wanting to recruit a lot of Louisiana kids. We were able to get a lot of great players very quickly just because they were getting no love, and now we're showing kind of what they're capable of doing.
Well, most importantly, there is senior libero Lexi Gonzalez, who is the
Mhm.
last standing volleyball Baton Rouge player. She played for us for a few years, and then when we folded the club in 2019, she had another season with another club, and of course, she's been with you, and she finally has won that libero job, and she's doing a great
Mhm.
job. But what a great kid, and I'm so happy for her.
Oh yeah, no, she's a tremendous person, tremendous family. Her mom Maria played here, so she's a little bit of a legacy and everything. So it's been great for her to get the opportunity to get out there and take over the bro position now that Tullis has left, and she's doing a great job with it and kind of carrying our serve receive and our defense for that matter.
Well,
I
Maria
want to ask about.
Gonzalez, her mom. Excuse me, one more thing, Emily. Her mom, of course, um, not only has coached for me, but
Hmm.
has been a really good high school coach. And there are a few people on the planet who have given me more crap than Maria Gonzalez, and I love her to death. She's also been waging a very fierce, tough battle against cancer the last few years, and um,
Yes.
there is not a better person out there and a better family. But go ahead, Em.
I just wanted to ask about one of your pins. I mean, Cicely Hidalgo has been putting up awesome numbers, and I'm sure so nice to have on the court. What's impressed you most with her so far?
I mean, I think this year more than anything, just her leadership. She's not the biggest vocal kid in the world all the time, but she'll jump into huddles and stuff, and as soon as I'm done talking, she jumps in and takes care of athletes and takes care of just kind of the energy, keeping everybody calm. But it's real. Other than that, it's we call Cicely Hidalgo has like two modes. She's got like normal Cicely mode, which is really good, and then she has like God mode Cicely Hidalgo, where it's like all of a sudden there's no block that even matters in the gym. She'll just go OT on everybody, and she's tremendous. And the fact is, we've really finally been able to kind of turn her into a full on topspin jump server, which we've been trying to do for a few years now because we love to use that arm, and she had some shin issues the last couple of years fully healthy now, able to kind of go out and do what she can do. And so it's been tremendous because she's really starting to turn that on as well.
Yeah, well,
Emily, her sister went there before her, and Cicely was so skinny and so just like nobody took a chance on her because you didn't think she could put up with the rigors of college volleyball. And
Yeah.
just to tell one quick story, we went over for volleyball Baton Rouge one year. We had some of the Turling's Catholic kids in Lafayette
Mm-hmm.
consider playing for this elite, 17s or 18s team, whatever it was at the time. And I remember talking to her and her parents, and it wasn't a good fit. She was better off staying where she was. But
Mm-hmm.
one of the coolest things ever, Turling's Catholic, which is where Super Bowl champion quarterback Jake Delhomme went. There's your trivia note.
Mm-hmm.
Before the high school match, two girls on the team got out their violins, and I almost would call them fiddles, and played the national anthem.
oh,
It was unbelievable. Two kids from the team. It was crazy. It was amazing.
Yeah,
I love that.
Louisiana's got its little quirks, man, and they're all fun.
I want to ask kind of about the just systematically with your team. Obviously, we talked about Cicely and the numbers she's putting up, but I mean, in general, you guys are incredibly balanced. And I'm kind of wondering, just systematically, why did you decide to? Have you been running a 6-2 all year, or?
Yeah, I mean, we really just felt like we have a tremendous crop of lefties. I don't know,
Yeah.
one year, just a couple years in a row, I decided to get one, we had the opportunity to, and two, just the idea of being able to kind of speed up both sides of the net really quickly to go as we run kind of more like a Western Kentucky kind of loop your ball in the middle for the most part, which I feel like is becoming more and more prominent around the country. But it needs a little bit of that ability to get to the pins quickly, so you can attack a bunch block scheme just as well as a wide blocking scheme, and that's been something we've really made it a point to do. But we seek out I think it's because of the versatility of our athletes is really the biggest piece. Kyra McKelvey had a great match this past weekend against SFA. And she's a kid who's played 6 rotations as both the left side and a right side, so that's always helpful. Alexis Lagarbo, our other lefty, was a middle in high school, and then right side in club, and plays beach for us as well. And then Kira Beverly, India Bennett, both kids who we've had in the program for a little bit, and they just really valued what they could do from a visual standpoint, be able to actually see the block and attack around it. So it makes them a little more of an efficient attacker, which gives us the ability. And heck, Hannah Brewer came here as a outside, had some injuries, played middle for us for 3 years, basically. It turned back into a left side against SFA of all people when we were at UTEP. And it's just I think the versatility of our athletes, the fact that we've got kids who can score it everywhere, and really even the depth to do that within our bench as well. It makes us difficult to defend because you can't just key on certain people. I mean, it seemed like SFA was trying to take away our outsides because they scored really well against them last time, and Kyra goes off for 21 kills, really in 4 sets because we didn't even really make it to be able to even set her in the 5th set. So she rotated in for I think 2 points.
What I'm hearing is you just got some crazy athletes on your team, essentially.
They do.
We'll just say working hard in recruiting is something that is a
There you go.
nonstop thing, and also just turning over every rock. Everybody. I think a lot of times we get hung up on athletes from big clubs that have played really high level ball, which is always a great thing, and we try to make sure we're like taking a look at those as well. But there's some diamonds in the rough out there. If you do really put the work in and find them kind of in weird places and stuff like that, they can come out to be gems.
Emily, they're not monsters. Trust me, these got a couple of big kids, but so
Yeah.
we'll get you out of here on this. You've survived the Stephen F. Austin challenge for now,
Mm-hmm.
and that no disrespect, but you playing the bottom half of the field the last 4 matches of the Southland season. So there's a real good chance this 12-0 could be 16-0 going into the Southland
Mm-hmm.
Conference tournament.
Yeah.
And these guys are 20-4, by the way. And but you're also 61 in the RPI and far ahead of
Mm-hmm.
anybody else in the league. So it's a one and done league, and it's a one
Mm-hmm.
bid league. So but you've been through this before. But how do you
Yeah.
approach that these last few weeks?
I will say I do think we have a couple of tougher ones and stuff this week just because we have Corpus, who's just different with the way they run their offense, and RGV looks a lot like our team looked like last year, where they had 3 really good pins. So I'll be interested to see how we kind of handle these guys as we haven't seen them yet this year. And then, but no, I think it's the same thing. We just kind of keep grinding forward, focus on one game at a time kind of mindset. Because if we do that, then I mean, we understand that it's a one bid league a lot of the time. We understand that it's going to be required of us to, go out and play our best every single match. We've really started to learn how to play with the target on our back, and we've had a couple of hiccups. Like we lost I didn't think we probably should have dropped the first set to Nichols the other day, but you live and you learn. You got better, and we finished off really well there. But we just got to keep that. I mean, the fact that we've had so many of these kids in the program for so long and have already won a couple of championships. I think we're in a good place to do that. It's also, we have the conference championship on our home floor this year again, so that'll give us a little bit of an ad.
Jeremy, I'm having a ball up here in Massachusetts, so I can't tell you that I miss Louisiana, but I do miss the ease with which I could run over and see you guys play. So best of luck, and really thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate it for having me. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Em, I got some RPI stuff here that's worth checking out. And
Hit me.
all right, the SEC, we talked about what a jumbled mess was, because yesterday, I watched Oklahoma for some reason. I've watched them so much, and it just enjoyed the way Aaron Mansfield's doing a great job. They're so well coached, but they were so close so many times. They've gone to 5 a whole bunch. But the SEC, and they're not. Oklahoma's not one of them. SEC has 7 teams in the top 40.
Yeah.
3 more in the 40s, and LSU is at 53. And
Crazy.
the SEC doesn't pass the eyeball test, and the SEC is going to end up getting the most teams in the NCAA tournament again.
It definitely seems that way. And the RPI game, and a lot of coaches talk about wanting to get rid of them and all that. I had a long conversation with Jamie Morrison before I did their Wisconsin A&M match, and obviously the SEC benefits from this. They did last season, but a lot of coaches are like, this is not indicative of how good these teams are. And at some point, I think normally when the committee is looking at those bubble teams, it becomes really difficult for them to just justify eyeball tests. Like you can't really do that at that point. You have to go with wins and losses, and essentially RPI is the biggest factor in that for most of these teams that get in at the end. But I agree. I mean, when you look at the SEC standings, Missouri up there at 7-2. I mean, Don Sullivan's doing an incredible job, but I want to go back to those 2 Texas matches, because I think there's a consensus that things are not going well in Austin right now. They've now lost 3 straight matches at home to unranked opponents. And the last 2 against Missouri and Oklahoma last weekend, they're up 2-1, and then they end up losing in 5. And I think this is a time where Texas is going to get a gut punch and say, not that they're in jeopardy of making the tournament or anything like that, but they could be in jeopardy of hosting if they keep having weeks like this.
Correct. Oh, they're definitely in jeopardy of not being a top 16 host. So 2 things about that match Sunday. Alexis Shelton for Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, 27 kills. She had 365, 2 assists, an ace, 5 blocks, 2 of them solo, and 15 digs. She just flat out just bowed up and played fantastic. Texas, on the other hand, a couple of observations. Madison Skinner had 17 kills, but she had 11 errors. And then Emma Halter, who was such a spectacular freshman libero down the stretch last year. People say, well, how come she wasn't an All-American? Well, because she was kind of invisible the first half of the season and then was just so good. She's struggling. She's struggling right now. And for whatever reason, whether they're not getting the block, whether her game's off, people are picking on her the right way. And that's such a big part of it.
Definitely. And I think in these big moments too, you need your high level leaders to take over, whether that's someone like Madison Skinner, Emma Halter in the backcourt, whatever it is. Also, I know they've been toying around with having Skinner only play 3 rotations and not play the back row, which to me doesn't make any sense in a 6-2 because you run out of subs. But how do you keep a player like Maddie Skinner only in 3 rotations? And to me, I think the biggest thing was just when you look at the 5th set stats for both of those games, like Texas's defense just didn't show up completely against Missouri and then against Oklahoma. And in those 5th sets, that's when you need your leaders to take over. And that's when they have to find a way. Hey, we're not losing to this unranked team at home. You need to play Texas volleyball to get there. And to me, that just shows that they've kind of got bigger problems right now than just whoever's out on the court. Because at that point, when you're losing these really tight matches against unranked opponents, or when you're losing them, you need your big players to show up, and that's not happening.
Well, they hit a $187. That's just not what we expect out of Texas. But so back to the Big 12 has 6 teams in the top 40, and nobody else. Back to that RPI. ACC has 4 in the top 8 and 10 in the top 40, and then the Big 10 has 3 in the top 7, 9 in the top 40, and Michigan's at 50. Yeah. Which if Michigan were to disrupt things. So we had our volleyballmag.com Super 16 media poll that came out today, and Texas dropped down 4 spots to 13. That's a and have to see where is Texas RPI wise right now. Texas is 11 RPI, but so it's safe to say Texas not going to be a top 4 seed. So Texas is going to go somewhere, which is going to be really interesting in the bracket. That's for sure.
And that's the thing is, when you look at the top 4 seeds and then look at the pool of 16, I mean, I remember at one point it was going to be like Nebraska, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Texas or something crazy. So it's going to be wild to see where they end up in those 16. Well, really the 32, how they're seeded out, because you could get completely screwed. Like Nebraska or Pitt could be hosting a pool that is objectively the strongest pool with the most firepower. So it's going to be crazy to see how it ends up playing out, because some of those top teams have taken very uncharacteristic losses.
The regionals could be better than the Final Four this year. I mean, for sure. Although we've been lucky the last few years, we've had fabulously 3 good matches in a row at the national championships. Can I give my weekly shout out to people we usually never get a chance to give shout outs to?
Heck yeah, do it.
Who knew that Quinnipiac had an Italian opposite, Elena Giacomini? She had 31 kills, and it was a pretty big upset of Fairfield.
Okay.
Things are now tightening up a little bit in the MAC. She had 31 kills, 2 assists, 2 aces, 15 digs, and 3 blocks. And then Brown lost to Princeton, which was a weird Ivy League game that was on ESPNU yesterday afternoon. Maria with 2 eyes, Sidorova, had 26 kills. And, of course, there was Shelton. And then Delaware State lost its MEAC match in 5 at Norfolk State. But Jaron Tomlin, 25 kills, hit 354, on and on. And how about the reverse sweeps continue? There was only one yesterday, but it was somebody texting me right now about asking when I'm heading to Dartmouth, Mass. That's our closer. Not Dartmouth, New Hampshire, Dartmouth, Mass. So Kennedy Knudsen has had a really good career for Utah Tech. On Saturday, in a WAC win over Utah Valley, she had a program record 34 kills and other good stats. And then Julia Cardona. Have you had a chance yet to ever just tune in on Evansville on the ESPN Plus just to check them out?
I haven't, but I'm going to go back and watch Volumetrics.
She had 31 kills in a 5-setter against Bradley.
I've got a shout out.
James Madison, Bree Reed, a couple of players, and then also Jalen Stout, the little setter opposite for Coastal Carolina, had her 15th triple-double of the season, breaking her own NCAA record of 14 from last year. She's a sophomore, but against Georgia Southern, 16 kills, hit 400, had 17 assists, and 19 digs.
That's ridiculous.
It is. And she just is a big time jumper. And a couple players I never heard of. UC Riverside, 1-5 at Long Beach State. Trinity Sheridan, 31 kills. I'd be lying to you if I said I ever heard of Trinity Sheridan. I
forgot. I finally got to see Florida on Wednesday. It feels like 8 years ago right now, but I was at Arkansas for Florida, Arkansas. I finally got to see Kennedy Martin in person, and Lee, oh my gosh, she is insane. I mean, she put up back-to-back 31 kill nights. She did it against Tennessee the weekend before, and then same thing against Arkansas. And the craziest part of it was we were 1 set in and Florida was playing horribly. They're hitting negative. Arkansas just completely took it to them. And Arkansas is a fun team to watch. They're very low error. They keep the ball in play. They're really gritty. But during this first set, Florida hits negative. Kennedy Martin, I think she had like 2 kills, maybe 3 kills. And Sam and I are talking and we're like, oh, this might be Kennedy Martin's first ever match not hitting double-digit kills. And we're like, oh, this is crazy. Then she goes off for 31 kills on the night. And we're like, okay. And at some point, I just started to feel bad for Arkansas. Like they chuck it up to Kennedy Martin. Didn't matter. They could have put 6 blockers up against her and she's going over it. She's going around it. She's perfectly placing the ball. And so many of them were clean kills. They weren't touching anybody, like just right on the floor. I was shocked. I mean, she was incredible. It was the same thing. I remember the first time I got to see Babcock live. I guess I saw him at the tournament last year, but the first time I got to call one of their matches and just like seeing these players that you see put up these crazy numbers every night, but you haven't really seen him in person. Because to me, I think it does make a difference. And I mean, Kennedy Martin is a hell of a player.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, we have so much emphasis, and especially when we talk or anybody else like on the broadcast, they talk about National Player of the Year candidates, and
Yeah.
certainly, like, Olivia Babcock and Tori Stafford at Pitt, and you could go host them. Sarah Franklin, and pick who you
Yeah.
want from Nebraska, and you go on and on. Kennedy Martin is going to have
Yeah.
some serious consideration, and shouldn't necessarily be penalized if Florida doesn't go far, because
And
she's
that's
that good.
totally. And that's the tough part is normally that player of the year comes from one of the top teams, and Florida's they're not, I don't want to say they're struggling, but they're definitely not consistent right now. And to be fair, that is not a team that you want to play in the NCAA tournament. They kind of remind me of like Louisville in 2019 when they went on that run and took down 2-seeded Texas and all of that. I could see this Florida team being somewhat similar to that. They probably won't be seeded, but this is not a team that you want to play in
They're
December.
right in there to win the SEC and have a late run. They've played a lot of their tough matches already. Of the players in the current NCAA, and not in Los Angeles 28, but in 2032, players who I expect will be in the mix for the Olympics. Maddie Skinner, Cami Minor, and Kennedy Martin. I think ahead of a lot of other people who are certainly going to get into the national team gym. But I would think those
I
are
mean, Babcock has to be on that list.
probably, but right.
And the way that Franklin passes, that gets her in. To me, that gets her in above Maddie Skinner.
Maybe because of the dynamics of how physical it is at the next level. I mean, not that Sarah Franklin's not physical, and this, I'm not talking about the only one who I think is going to. Well, I shouldn't say the only one, but the strongest candidate for 28 is Cami Minor. I think she can get herself into the setting mix, especially if Jordan Poulter and Lauren Carlini don't come back. And I don't know what Micah Hancock's status is. I'll know the answer to all those things in the next couple of months, of course.
I was going to say, yeah.
Anyway, I digress. So before we get to this week, the most important development of last week, we haven't even touched on it, because we've talked about all this other stuff. One of the most important people in Emily Ehman's life has returned to coaching.
Yes, he has. I'm so excited. Shane Davis took over the Loyola men's job. It was funny. I was texting with him. Actually, I needed real estate advice. So we're getting lunch on Thursday. So we were setting that up. And I asked him and I was like, hey, I know the Loyola job's open. Like, would you ever think about going back? And he was like, I'm definitely talking to them. And I was like, let's go. I was so excited. And then they announced it. And I mean, he is truly one of my favorite people on the entire planet. I mean, in college, he was like a second dad to me. I think he's just one of the best people ever. I loved him as a coach. And this is honestly, the chips fell perfectly for him to go back and take over that program. And I'm excited to now become Loyola's biggest volleyball fan ever.
Well, excuse me. They won back-to-back. I don't know, was it back-to-back national championships?
Back-to-back.
Sure.
Yep.
And he left there to go become the coach at Northwestern, which of course he got one of the great DSs of our time.
He was probably not happy seeing me in the gym, not every day.
But he's a fabulous coach, and he just couldn't catch a break at Northwestern. It was always one step forward, two steps backwards. So I'm so glad for volleyball that he's back in, and he is a wonderful guy. All right,
on that same note, on Sunday I got to go be a fan, and Nebraska was playing at Northwestern, and this was really the second game I've been to this season. I always try to go back when I can, but obviously I'm mostly calling the matches. So they had their first sellout in program history. They had over 6,000 there. The entire arena was full. Yes, of course, a ton of them were Nebraska fans, but like they still had a sellout. A lot of people, I get posted on Twitter and people are like, but there's so much red. Like, okay, Nebraska's been ranked top 2 before and come into that building. It's never even been close to a sellout. So sure, there were a lot of Nebraska fans, of course, but a sellout is a sellout.
Oh, hey, honey, we're going to Chicago. We're gonna have a big old weekend. We're gonna watch Big Red play at Northwestern, and we're gonna go have a big time in Chicago, which is a wonderful city to go to as a tourist, and as a Nebraska volleyball fan tourist.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, they just absolutely destroyed Northwestern, but
oh yeah. I was going to leave that part out. What a week coming up. Emily's in charge of the list, and the list she sent starts with Wednesday, Kansas at Arizona State. Talk about a Big 12 matchup, huh?
Yeah, that's definitely going to be a big one. I think honestly a really good test to see how good this Kansas team is, because Arizona State right now, I mean, they're rolling.
Washington at Minnesota. Washington playing for seeding purposes, probably in. Minnesota playing for a top 16. And then
Keaton
Nebraska.
Cook, his former team, that's always a fun little tie-in.
Yep, first time in Minnesota with them being in the Big Ten. And then Nebraska at Oregon, which is a big match for both teams. Tough trip for Nebraska to go west like that. And then Oregon's good. Playing for a top 16 seed.
The halfway across the country trip is never going to be easy for any of these Big Ten teams. And I don't know what the match times are. I haven't looked, but I'm assuming they're probably pretty late, which again could absolutely fall into favor of either Oregon or Washington later on in the week.
Friday, you put down Auburn at Florida. Auburn's really,
like
ever
Auburn.
since that time. I know you do, and ever since the time about a month ago, and you said you were rah Auburn. Really, so they need a win. Texas,
I like Auburn.
I know, and I love, hey, and because you went on the plains and survived the hurricane.
Well, and I think it's a good opportunity for Auburn to potentially get a win against the Florida team that's been somewhat inconsistent.
Gotta Texas A&M at Kentucky also in the league. UNC, North Carolina, tough home loss to Georgia Tech yesterday at Pitt, but I assure you they'll play well. And then BYU, Utah, which was always special, but even more special now because they're back in the same conference.
Yeah.
I haven't even asked you which ones you have yet, but we'll get to that. Penn State at Wisconsin on Saturday, Oregon at Minnesota, Nebraska at Washington, and then Georgia Tech at Stanford.
Saturday is going to be a crazy day of volleyball.
Can I say this about Stanford? So I'm watching Stanford play at Miami.
Yeah, what are we doing?
Grace Lopez is just spectacularly great.
So good
for Miami, and Kenna's doing a great job there. But they're playing in a junior high school gym. I'm sorry. And you could just see the look on the faces of Stanford. Like, we're making regular passes. Cami Miner's making regular long distance, no look back sets, and they're hitting the rafters. And it was just, oh, come on, you guys.
Also Grace Lopez goes off. Stanford is a little bit more balanced in that sense, but honestly, it kind of came down to, it sounds dumb, but it's going to come down to the fifth set and who can do better. And offensively, I mean, there wasn't much defense played in the match in general.
But Ceiling played a lot of defense.
Ceiling played a ton of defense, but to be honest, it's those big moments that matter the most. And you have a Miami team that's down 2-1 against Stanford. They win the fourth set 31-29, and then you get to the fifth and they go 16-14. So again, it's those big moments where, you have to have your big players step up, and Stanford just didn't rise to the occasion.
No, and I'm sure they're happy to be over with that trip after going to Florida State, winning 4, get back home. That is what we talked about when the Pac-12 folded and those two teams, Stanford and Cal, joined the Big Ten, or the ACC, and UCLA and USC and Washington, Oregon joining the Big Ten, and how these crazy trips. And I think those were examples of it. All right, and then Sunday, Texas A&M at Tennessee, important SEC match for both teams, and then Carolina at SMU, important.
That'll be a good one.
So what you got?
I only have one match this week, which
you had you had the weekend off and you have only one match?
Well, I had a match last Friday. So yeah, I had Saturday, Sunday off, which was lovely. Yeah, okay. Well, to be honest, once we get into November, basketball starts, and so there's just less matches on TV in general. But yeah, I have Oregon at Minnesota on Saturday, and this week I have TV to watch with the election. And a self-care day on Wednesday.
Good for you. That's good. Well, we alluded to this last week. The Marblehead Magicians made the state tournament. We were supposed to find out Monday last week, the bracket. Now, I'm paraphrasing and getting this like third hand, but somebody filed an injunction because there was a team that didn't get credit for 3 wins because procedurally they did something wrong. And I don't know exactly how it all unfolded, but it's my guess was they just expanded the field, created some buys, and didn't announce it till Wednesday. So this afternoon, we're going to Dartmouth, Massachusetts. Now, I knew about Dartmouth, New Hampshire, where Dartmouth is. Dartmouth, Massachusetts is one of the southernmost points in southeast Massachusetts. So we're leaving in a little while for a 6:30 game because it's with traffic, you never know. and it's a big state tournament match, so we're pretty fired up. So
how deep? I don't know how the system works there. Like we had sectionals, regionals, semi-state, state. Where are we at in that?
This is a first round, I think, of down to maybe down past 32, but I got kind of confused because I can't make the bracket fit on one page. And there were all these buys, and they were originally, Marblehead was originally 19th in the seed and going to play at the 14, which was a little bit closer. And then they got dropped to 20, and now they're playing at the 13. We have no idea who's good, who's bad. And anyway,
this seems really late. Like I remember our state tournament in Indiana, we were done. They might have finished last weekend. Like this feels very late to be not deep into the tournament.
Well, Louisiana, it's a week from this weekend, always. And we had to hold off our club tryouts until afterwards.
Yeah.
Always. And but I went to a 7-year-old soccer game on Saturday morning and a 13-year-old's hockey game on Saturday afternoon. And I'm driving a couple hours today to a basketball. We're grandparenting the hell out of this movie.
I was gonna say, I love this for you, getting to go to all this stuff. That's awesome. I'm happy for you.
I'll be watching a lot. I'm home for watching a lot of volleyball. Go Jackrabbits. Win 2 more, be 24-0, and I promise I'll put them in at number 16.
You said that last week, you liar.
I know. So one last thing, we're going to turn this into a podcast. We hope an audio podcast you'll be able to download the usual way. And Emily and I have agreed we're going to call it 900 Square Feet, Talking Volleyball with Emily and Lee or something like that. And I didn't come up with the phrase, but there's 900 square feet over there. Hit one of them, please. I've used that. There it is. She is the inimitable Emily Ehman, and I love talking to her. And thank you for putting up with us and watching.